Wrong way to look at it. Value can only occur on the side of the customer or prospect. A horrible curse of centuries in evolution of sales is there's no barriers to entry. At the end of a year's time, you're going to replace your entire organization.
Welcome to another episode of the 5 to 50 Million Show. I am here today with my friend and mentor, Mikey Maynard. Mikey, you can tell by the gray hair, you've been in business for a little while, right? And knows just about everything a single individual should know about how businesses should run and operate. So the fountain of useful and useless knowledge, right? You got a little bit of both, more useful than anything else. And obviously, Mikey, you and I have had known each other for a long time. So this should be a fun episode. We can throw jabs back and forth, give the listeners a little bit of entertainment, along with a lot of helpful information is what my expectations are for this conversation. So Mikey, so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining today.
Well, you know, although I'm elderly, this is my first visit to 5 to 50. So how exciting to do something new.
Yes. I love it. And so let's get into things a little bit. First, you know, if you wouldn't mind, give the audience here just a little bit more of a taste of what you've done throughout your career. Give us a little bit of a resume read, if you will.
So, you know, probably the right word is practitioner. I'm not a theorist. I'm not a global authority on anything. What I have to do is make revenue happen.
Yeah.
And across a, 50-year career, I've probably sold every kind of product and service via every vector by which we might produce revenue. Started out back in the day, literally knocking on doors. You know a little bit about that. You've done that work.
Done that, yep.
Got the Rottweilers let loose on me, got shot at one time, had the police called on me more times than I know. And Devyn, every kind of way to make a dollar change hands and do a value exchange, a good or a service that ought to produce an outcome for a price that's reasonable given the value it gives, and whether it's phone-based, internet-based, business to consumer, business to business, enterprise sales, multi-level marketing. I mean, name it. I've probably either done it, managed it, or led it at some point. And the concept is always, how can we get better at exchanging value for value? That way the customer gets a great deal and the purveyor is able to employ people, pay taxes, build the economy, and share prosperity. That's really what the world of revenue is about.
Love it. Yes, that's the challenge that I issue to any entrepreneur that I'm working with. It's like, identify what value you're bringing to the market and learn how to articulate that value to somebody else. And when you get really good at that, and you're not disingenuous, right? Like, you're literally bringing value. If you're bringing somebody value, whether that's your time, your knowledge, or whatever it may be, and you can articulate that, then the revenue piece becomes much easier, right? When that exchange of value for money becomes much easier. So let's go deeper into that. Let's talk about revenue generation. Let's talk about people that can generate revenue, right? Businesses that scaled, you generally need to scale up a sales department in some form or fashion. And you've seen a lot of that, done it yourself, have built teams yourself. So let's talk about the revenue generation piece first, and then we'll kind of back into the people. How do you get people generating revenue on your behalf? Does that sound fair?
Fair enough.
All right, great. So we talked about here for just a minute the value that a business can bring to the market, right? What are some ways that a business owner, or you've helped business owners understand like what their real value is in the marketplace, and then how they can, like I said, articulate that, market that, sell that? What are some best practices around that you've seen?
Great. The optimistic way is to say best practices. What might transpire in our conversation today is also colossal mistakes that we
Yeah.
make, which I suppose if you do the opposite of a colossal mistake, that becomes a best practice, right?
Yep.
So, mistake number one, in my view, when it comes to value, is as the owner, operator, investor in a business, we fall into the pothole of thinking that value is something we've created that we believe the customer should honor, uh, pay for, be glad they got. Wrong way to look at it.
Yeah.
Value can only occur on the side of the customer or prospect. It's literally the dollarized improvement they see in their life by virtue of using our products, services, advice, or whatever. And you can see it. I mean, drive in your car, open a website, go to a seminar, and seconds into the conversation, Devyn, the seller is extolling what they think the value is,
Right.
which really mostly old school speak is features and benefits.
Yep.
Our thing does this. If you use our service, you'll see this. The problem is that may in fact be empirically true, that it produces that outcome. What if the customer doesn't see that outcome as even important?
Right.
Now we're shouting, yelling, advertising. We've got our SDRs and BDRs making invasive phone calls. Hey, we'd like to connect with you. My account executive would like to come meet with you about our value. And the customer's like, yeah, but I'm not really interested in that.
Right.
So that was mistake. Let's turn it into best practice. Co-create your product or service with current or potential customers. Get them on board. Have a voice of the customer from lean canvas through creation, through minimally viable product, through launch. Where's your customer in all this? Because too often we go off in the ivory room and our best and brightest configure the thing.
Yep.
And we never check to see if it was even important to our customer.
Right. Right. So the principle of discovery, right? Understanding what your customers' needs are first before you present anything to them, right? This is sales fundamentals that you and I have taught in classrooms all over the place, right? To aspiring or current or expert sales reps is the co-creation principle. Is first you have to ask a lot of questions, get their opinion, is what you said, right? Help them co-create. Hey, can I get your opinion on this? Would you mind sharing, your thoughts on this? You're a market leader, you're a thought leader. Your experience and expertise would be incredibly valuable, right? What can you share? Are you willing to share? And being much more curious than what's the word I'm looking for, instead of boisterous, right? Being more curious than boisterous will get you a lot farther from a value development standpoint than anything else. Boisterous is, here's our website, here's what we do, you should work with us because of X, Y, and Z, like you said, right? So that, I love that. So co-creating a solution with your ideal client. Now, how do you understand like who your ideal client is, who you should be talking to, who may be the decision maker that can provide that input to co-create? How do you find those people?
Mistake number two, or Devyn will turn that into a best practice.
Yep.
As I'm working with sales teams in all manner of companies selling all manner of goods and services, left to their own devices, I find the typical frontline salesperson will go into a prospective customer company way too low on the food chain. They'll find folks who are approachable, willing to talk and share. And oddly, often those most willing to talk and share are the least capable of actually getting anything done within the prospect company.
Right.
But to salespeople, sometimes even sales leaders, it's fairly scary to think of going upstream, up the food chain to more of an economic buyer, business owner, operator, officer. And so the who do we talk to, if left to its own default in selling companies, is often we have wonderful conversations, often at length, meetings, fly across the country, take them to dinner, go to Topgolf. with the wrong people who can't, at the end of the day, make a strategic decision to partner with the selling company on something that could fundamentally change the buying organization's life because we started the whole conversation with the wrong who. We went, oh, this person will return my call. This person will take a ping and ping me back. Let's glom onto them. And at the end of the day, the person we talk to can't commit their own company to some strategic level partnership. And so in
And
early product creation, we're often getting feedback from the wrong customer.
right. And they're incapable of moving that up the food chain, so to speak, right? They're at that level and they can't go and sell internally to the right decision maker. And so we invest all this time and resources, and we've been talking to the wrong person the whole time, right? I think a lot of organizations may miss the fact that there is signing authority that exists based on contract size within the organization, right? You may have to eventually sell to the CFO who has the signing authority on a purchase of a certain size, right? So starting with somebody that's friendly and communicate with you, there's a long road to go to get to the CFO of that company that could actually sign the engagement that you believe could and would change their organization, some of their revenue outcomes, but you've burned your chance because you started way too low at the beginning.
Yeah. And there's a great body of work called the Challenger Sale, now part of the Gartner Group. Started during the Great Recession when the organization that would launch Challenger ultimately was asked to do research. Their clients were major corporations who noticed a phenomenon during the Great Recession, which is revenues are going down, profits are going down, markets are closing. It looks really bleak. But gosh, Devyn, 3 of our salespeople are like blowing it out the ceiling. Like, how could they be doing so well in such a down economy? They would later coin the term for those sellers as being challenger sellers. So you and I started this thread with a mistake. Mistake number 2, picking the wrong potential customer. Let's turn that into a best practice. What the challenger sale body of work learned that great, successful salespeople are able to do in a down economy is in your prospective organization, prospective client company, find a skeptic. They're not friendly.
Yep.
They're not eager to talk to you. They don't openly share. They'll look you right in the eye and say, I think your thing's the stupidest idea I've ever heard of. But a funny thing that superstar salespeople know about skeptics is once you win them over, they're the people who can really get stuff done in their company. They're even known in their company as being a skeptic. Oh, here comes the grouch.
Yep.
Oh, here comes the Grinch. But the grouch and the Grinch are profoundly analytical people who are able to see value if certain objections can be overcome. And winning them over early, actually, for great salespeople, becomes good sport. Because the likelihood they're going to like you, the likelihood they're going to be your friend is near zero.
Yep.
But once you prevail, they become great advocates and great champions who can really get stuff done. The more outspoken, verbal, social, friendly person in your prospective company is friendly to you, but they're friendly to everybody, and they're kind of known in their own company for not being able to get stuff done.
Right.
So a best practice when we're going, yeah, but who's my best customer? To what extent in your marketplace can you find in prospect companies those skeptics and win them over through performance because they'll carry you up that food chain to the people with the bigger sign-off limits, and left to their own, salespeople tend to default to the friendly ones. It takes real guts and real grit to go after the skeptics.
Yeah. Yeah. And the tidbit there to keep in mind, right? If you're out potentially hunting for business and you're talking to these skeptics, is the classic mistake a salesperson will make is believing, and this was proven, the opposite was proven true in the challenger sale, right? Was believing that my job is to get that person to like me, Devyn. I'm great. I'm the best thing in the world. I'm the best person that's ever come into their life. And so I'm going to be super nice. I'm going to send them gifts. I'm going to take them to Top Golf, and I'm going to do all these things to make them like me. That's not what moves the needle for skeptics. And that's not what challengers do.
The
right?
authors of the Challenger body of work called that the relationship seller.
Exactly. The relationship seller. And they found them to be less successful in the course of opportunities than the challenger, right?
Particularly in times where the economy or the marketplace is challenged. It's under duress. Numbers are down. Spending is down. Budgets are being closed. Capital expenditure is being turned off. Gosh, just being palsy-walsy and friends doesn't carry the day in that environment. So a different kind of sales approach had to emerge.
Right. And everything you just mentioned, that's kind of, the news cycles would maybe tell you differently about our economy, but I think the average person right now and the average business owner is maybe feeling the pinch of our current economy. Businesses have been cutting back their budgets. Venture-backed startups have been cutting people at record rates. It's been wave after wave of layoffs and people peeling back. So the market has changed. We're not in the palsy-walsy market anymore. We definitely are in a space where those that understand how to be a challenger can exceed and excel, but that's not a skill that everybody has, and it takes time to develop that skill. It is a skill set, right, of taking the skeptic and, as you mentioned, proving over and over and over essentially the value that you can bring and literally challenging their view of the world to get them to think differently. And that's the game. That's when it, like you said, it becomes really fun. And sometimes you can see that moment where it's like the light bulb goes off and it's like, well, maybe I have been thinking about this wrong. Maybe there is a different way. Maybe there is another opportunity that we could pursue that would change our trajectory as an organization. And that's the fulfilling thing for, I think me as a salesperson or any other really, really good salesperson out there is when you kind of have that moment and that business leader who's a skeptic have that aha moment and you win that business, and then your solution for them actually does change the trajectory of their business. I mean, there's not many feelings better than that in the world, right? I'm passionate about influencing and helping others, and I've led and have helped develop many salespeople, and seeing them latch on to these concepts and apply them and be successful, very fulfilling. And doing this for an organization is just that magnified 10x or 20x or 30x, and being like, wow, this organization was heading in this direction. And because of what we were able to do, it's completely 180'd them. And now they're gonna soar for a long time.
And as you were describing that, you know what hit me? If we make mistake number one, we define the value of our own product that we think it provides the marketplace, whether it does or not. Number two, we put it in the hands of salespeople who tend to want to be liked and insert themselves with the wrong part of the buying spectrum, the friendly ones who can't get anything done.
Yep.
The mistake number three, Devyn, it just emerged as you were talking a moment ago, taking all that to market with no revenue strategy.
Right.
Okay, we've got a product launch. Hey, the new rev is out. Hey, we just came off the, beginning of the year sales kickoff and everybody's jazzed up and we have a contest going. Now let's all go out and sell the wrong value to the wrong customer set, which salespeople I find are very hardworking. In fact, I think they work too hard. It's why I get emails at 3 a.m. or on a Sunday right? They're just churning and churning and churning. I don't think success in a sales career has to be that hard of work, but what it requires is the company and its leadership have to have a revenue strategy. I'm a practitioner of actual revenue science.
Yep.
Think about it. In companies for hundreds of years, we've had financial science. We've had operational science. We've even had leadership science. You come from a background even of real estate science, right? But revenue largely is practiced around the world with no science at all. We don't have any science behind the marketing. We don't have any science behind lead gen. We don't have any science behind who do we put out in the field to talk to whom. We leave salespeople, and I suppose marketing professionals, to their own devices minus a strategy. And now it's a whole bunch of activity with no forward motion. A friend of mine, Devyn, calls that the rocking chair syndrome. There's a whole lot of movement with no forward motion.
Yeah.
So now we got to look at strategy. We have to look at how do we put science behind our go-to-market so those hardworking sales, marketing, lead gen people aren't just left to their own devices with the wrong value prop,
Yep.
talking to the wrong customers and wondering, how come my success isn't going up? How come my pay isn't going up? Or from the company view, how come sales are flat or bumping and scraping along a minimum? They don't seem to be consistently tilted upwards. I'd advocate to you, most companies I look into, even very sophisticated and large companies, there's no revenue strategy. It's, well, I don't know, sell more.
Yeah.
That's not a strategy.
Right. Right. And now you have potentially great employees that are getting burnt out because they're not seeing the results, or they have their manager on them like, oh, work harder. Right. And they work too hard and they find themselves working at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's because they're selling the wrong thing to the wrong person. And it's not their fault. Like, they're doing what they've been told and they're working really hard at it. It was an upper level decision that was made, or lack thereof, that has now left this person spinning their wheels and underperforming in their role.
You and I both have recent experience of incredible amounts of effort and work and good intention applied to exactly the wrong marketplace with the wrong strategy and the wrong customer. And we couldn't save the company. In
Right.
spite of the hard work and the good people and the great values. I mean, values posters up on the walls that make you want to cry. They're so beautiful, but all of it aimed with the wrong strategy.
Right.
And then the results go worse and worse. And pretty soon it's below the recovery level and that entity ceases to exist. And you think, how could those people have worked so hard? Well, they didn't have a strategy.
Yeah.
Or they had one and it was utterly the wrong strategy. Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Let's talk about some of the elements, one of developing a strategy, getting clear on like the who, the why, the how, those types of things, which are the questions you ask when developing a strategy. And, you know, some fundamental principles or to follow, or mistakes to avoid when developing a revenue strategy or applying revenue science to your revenue strategy. That's step one, right? Is like, understand that revenue generation can be science. It's a math equation. I have this
It's absolutely a complex interlinked set of pretty simple equations.
Yep. I have this conversation with founders and business owners all the time. It's what do you want to do? First, you need to understand, what do you want to do? What outcomes would you like to have for your business this year? Okay. And now we can do some math. And I'm not a math guy. The only C I ever got in a report card was in math. But I didn't like it. And however, these days it is, if you're running a business, you got to learn to like math, because revenue generation, revenue science is a math equation. It's, if I'm going to put money into this, how much am I going to get back out of it? And how many times do I need to do that to get to this final outcome that I want? Right.
Yep.
It's almost that simple, but that's something that unfortunately goes over. Big companies, big sophisticated companies may
or
not
companies
even look at
with
it that way.
long standing track records. I'm currently working with a company that has been in business in essentially the same location for 50 years. They're the
Wow.
market leader in a particular type of precision manufacturing they do. And you could talk to any 15 executives in their market space and they'd all point to this company and go, yeah, they're the best. They're the leader. And that company cannot figure out why they can't get to the next level of revenue production. Pull some numbers, look at historicals, look at where they're at now, look at who the people are. We're going to cover that topic here momentarily.
Yep.
And I look back at them and say, yeah, you're not going to hit the next number. And they're like, what are you talking about? We have to grow. The principal owner actually is of my color, beautiful blonde hair, and is looking at probably retirement, which means some liquidity event for the business, whatever. They're totally privately held right now. And this could hold up his retirement. If they can't cross to the next revenue level and the attendant EBITDA and profit that go with that, he may not have multi-generational wealth. Devyn, he's been in the business. This is not a joke, since he was 6 years old.
Amazing.
Okay. Funny, a guy like me doesn't know precision manufacturing, doesn't understand the market space. I come in, I ask the CFO for some numbers. I look at some historicals. I look at who the reps are, which are selling. I look at the average line item dollar value price of what they sell. I look at the average size invoice in dollars, the number of those invoices that come in month by month. And I have a multi-year track record. So it's not just a snapshot point in time.
Yep.
And I say to him, you're not going to make it. He said, what do you mean I'm not going to make it? The math does not support that you will attain the growth with the current incumbent sales force selling the current line item pricing on the current size invoice. I'm not making a value judgment about your business. I'm not ridiculing the heart and soul your family put into business. I'm saying the numbers aren't there.
Right.
Now, here's the good news. That was a mistake. Let's go to best practice. Since we know the numbers, it's real easy to have trigger values for when we add more salespeople, when we add more product line at higher margin to get those line item and invoice prices higher. And pretty soon now we have a retirement plan funded.
Right.
It's math equations, Devyn.
Right. And many times, like, this individual, absolute expert in their space, know it inside, outside, forward, backward, and could tell you everything about the product that they manufacture
in their sleep.
And it takes someone like you, a complete outsider, agnostic to the business, couldn't tell you the first thing about whatever they manufacture.
Right.
But you can come in with your knowledge and expertise and sit down and look at just the math equation and pretty quickly understand, yep, the inputs aren't there to get to the output that you want. And again, here's the great news. This is revenue science is, okay, so what are the inputs now that we need to get the outputs that you want? Like you described, it's like, okay, at this point, we need to plug in another salesperson. At this point, we need to add more SKUs at this dollar amount. And if we're strategic and scientific about the application of these principles, now we can get to your retirement and creating generational wealth for your family, right? And so how was that received? And how was that received by business owners that may be skeptics even?
Well done, right? Here's the beauty of it. This ties a little bow on our thread so far. So when we've achieved the aha moment with the math, hey, looks like you're not going to make it, but here's what it would take. Now we go back and correct mistake number one, and we involve their customer in understanding what the value of what we sell is, not in our world, in the customer's view. What dollar amount does their life improve by through the use of our precision manufactured finished goods? 50 years, they never thought to ask that of their customers.
Right.
They said, we're hardworking, we have the best machinery, we make the best precisions. That's not what the customer values. So let's go relearn that.
Yep.
Now, remember I said left to their own, sales, marketing, lead gen professionals tend to default to wanting to be liked or wanting to not be punished.
Yep.
Kind of the same thing. And therefore, the salespeople choose the wrong customer. Now it gives us a chance to say, given where we now know mathematically we need to go, here's where we can go back and visit the customer and understand value. And Devyn, here's where we now can repopulate our sales force with people equipped to sell the new SKUs at the next level at the higher dollar value. By the way, at higher profit margins, which means we're not going to play the low price war anymore, which means that's an executive conversation, not a user conversation. Devyn, now we're starting to see a fix on the most common mistakes that I see every single day all over the world is founder had good intentions, product mix is perfectly good for what it does, the idea, the intent is all there, but there was never a strategy and never any science behind it. I just watched a feed on the internet of a British female swimmer. I'm not joking, Devyn. In open ocean swam something like 20 miles. Frozen North Sea, sharks, I mean, who knows? But The crew that was with her were computing all kinds of timings, the stroke of her arms, how many kicks, and pretty soon they knew what they would need to yell through a megaphone to cause her to change her game a little. And she made exhausted, but she made it. They actually had to pull her physically by arms and legs out of the water at the finish line. But there was a lot of math and a lot of strategy that went into that. Now, you throw me in the North Sea, I'm dead in the first 50 feet.
Yep.
Yeah, I sink like a rock.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is what we try to do with the revenue function in companies is we try to have a strategy that's based on mathematical principles as being attainable. And then we work it back through our customers and prospects to put it in their value. And then we equip salespeople, which I got to be honest with you, very often my first act in office when I help a customer is terminating underperforming sales, marketing, and lead gen professionals who we now can predict. We're counting their arm strokes, looking at their kicks, how fast are they making the waves. They're not going to make it, Devyn.
Yep.
And it's humane to move them on to something else in their career and put those in who are ready to swim the channel. That's how we turn around a struggling, flat, or failing revenue function in a company.
Love it. One key point in there, I think that I wanted to articulate further is it could be interpreted what we've been talking about here is like, well, duh, obviously we could just create more products at a higher price point if we want to increase our revenue. The key point is if you just go out and start creating more products at a higher price point that you think
you're back to mistake number one.
You're back to mistake number one, right?
Yeah.
Now you've spent more resources, put yourself further potentially into the red even. Maybe you're operating in the black, but it's thin. Now you put yourself into the red, hoping that a product at a higher price point that you're bringing to the market is actually going to sell. And it could get completely rejected. And now you've really put your company in a
Or
tough
let's
position.
give credit to the company. They did a great job with project addition and re-engineering. Fabulous, state of the art. And they put it in the hands of a sales force who aren't equipped to sell it.
Right.
I think my father, rest his soul, was a master gardener. And I think, it's great to have a master gardener, but if we don't give him the right shovel, tools, fertilizer, water, all the master gardening does nothing. And it's the same with salespeople. If we have the most beautifully crafted service offering that our customers helped co-create, and we put it in the hands of salespeople who can't articulate it, have an overwhelming desire to be liked, won't stand up to resistance, can't articulate value back in the customer's term, and can't carry that up to economic buyer decision makers,
and
we're going to fail anyway.
And won't follow a process, right?
Absolutely.
I think you would agree the most successful salespeople we know are more process-oriented than personality-oriented. Right? The most effective people will step one this, step two this, step three this, and they'll be diligent about following a process to get to the end goal. And that's if you don't have salespeople in your organization that are relentless about a process and can be persuasive in their conversations, right? You have to be, I'm not saying that a salesperson shouldn't be likable, right? You have to be persuasive in your conversation. You may not be well liked, but if you can persuade somebody and follow a process, you will be successful. And you want to have somebody in your organization that operates that way and gets along well with others, right? So there's a bit of a unicorn potentially that we may need to go out to the marketplace and find. So let's talk about that. How do we find those salespeople that, have enough of the personality and drive to not be afraid to talk to people? Because there's some people that are naturally introverted and should probably never get into a outbound or even inbound sales type of role, right? It's just like people are not their thing. They want to work behind a screen. Absolutely. We need those people too. So how do we identify those people that are willing to talk to anybody and be diligent about following a sales process so that their outcomes in their role become more predictable, right? If everything in life was predictable, man, how comfortable could we be? The good news is you can, right, have some predictability around the outputs of a person that you hire if you go about hiring the right way.
Right. The horrible curse of centuries in evolution of sales is there's no barriers to entry. I know many, many, many organizations that if you're willing to show up on Monday and can make, 100 dials and 40 emails a day and so on and so forth, you get hired. So ease of entry has allowed anybody in. Let's take a field you know well. Let's take the field of real estate, particularly residential real estate brokerage.
Yep.
You have a long track record in that business. Our domicile today to record this podcast happens to be in the Phoenix submarket, Arizona, United States of America. And in the Phoenix submarket, over two waves that I have visibility to, first in the early 2000s and then about 3 to 4 to 5 years ago, real estate brokerages took on agents. If you were a retired school teacher, a bus mechanic, if you were young and just got out of college and don't yet have a job, and you can sit for the real estate licensing exam, you can join our brokerage and be an agent.
Yep.
So in the Phoenix market, we literally took on, this is no joke, hundreds of thousands of new realtors when the market was good. They made a lot of money. Houses were selling themselves in the current wave of that we just passed through. Internet and electronic buying by proxy using algorithms and bots. You'll hardly need a statutory agent except to get the paperwork done. But then when the market goes down, that no barriers to entry, that ease of entry, revealed we have a lot of people acting as residential real estate agents who quite literally are not qualified.
Yep.
And when the market's down, they do not know how to sustain that. So Phoenix and certain other major metro areas, Vegas, Atlanta, I can think of others, absorb hundreds of thousands of new realtors, and the market goes down. What happens to them? They all quit.
Yep.
They're gone, and only the veterans stay. And most real estate brokerage offices are cricket noise. Right? Well, selling real estate is a sales profession, and that's just a glaring example that a lot of companies go through of, wow, if they're willing, we held a job fair, and gosh, if we could just fill 13 more call center seats, I almost don't care who we fill them with. I said when we started this podcast, I've sold almost everything to almost everybody. There was an era when I was in call center operation, contract call center operation, no joke, Devyn, where I rented 15 passenger vans, and we would send those vans to halfway houses where felony convicts were being slowly released back into productive society, and they had to, by court order, spend a time in a halfway house, meaning during the day they could work for money, but at night they had to be under lock and key of the halfway house supervisor.
Yep.
Think about that. My team at my call center is going to call on you, the consumer, and we're going to sell you stuff. And the person selling it to you is a felon who probably committed a felony of some kind of theft in office to run afoul of the law. But now they're selling you stuff working for my call center.
Makes me feel great inside.
So I'm as guilty as anybody of too much ease of entry.
Yep.
So Devyn, I no longer am a proponent for placing people into jobs and hoping they'll work out.
100%.
We can't run a business like that.
Yep.
Especially, I don't know what you're finding, but today, first quarter 2024, I'm finding that what shows up for a job interview today, globally, universally, is what a friend of mine, you know her, Neely Tubati Alexander, calls the best of the worst.
Right.
Like you can't believe they're interviewing for a job at your company. They're so terrible.
Yep.
That's all you're going to get.
Yep.
There's nothing more. So it's very tempting to go, gosh, I hate that we're bringing this person onto the team, but look, I'm under the gun. I got to fill these seats. I'll get killed here. Go ahead. Hey, HR, send them an offer. Let's hope they work. We can't do that anymore.
Right.
So now what we have to do is pick those with a predictive likelihood to succeed. Here's a shocking empirical statistic for your listeners and those who view your casts and those who join your website, 5 to 50. This will shock you. I've done empirical research for more than 30 years in sales organizations. I can definitively tell you that the old Pareto principle or 80-20 rule,
Yep.
80% of your revenue probably comes from 20% of your incumbent sales reps is actually wrong. 88 to 96% of your revenue, get ready for it, comes from 8% of your team. I can literally look at any sales team of any size, number of bodies in the sales team, and I can tell you that 8% of them are carrying the load for everybody else. I talked about a precision manufacturing company. They have 5 salespeople. What's 8% of 5 people? How many people is that?
Less than 1.
One person carries 80% of all the revenue for that team.
Yep.
It's shocking, but it's universal. I've actually taken a dare from audiences. Prove me wrong. Show me that like 50% of your people are achieving plan. Well, I just last week read the statistics are finally out from Chief Sales Officer Magazine, studies this every year. Last year, the year 2023, globally, 27% of salespeople attained their target or quota. Let me put that another way.
Yeah.
73% of all your salespeople sitting in a seat, occupying, breathing your air, with their cell phone allowance and their base salary and their benefits package that's 17% above their salary. All that S, G, and A sitting on your books that your chief financial officer is gnashing their teeth about is in the hands of those 73% of people that aren't carrying their load. So, best practice number 1, that's a mistake. Best practice number 1, Devyn, going forward, only hire the 8% or the superstars. There's another 10% behind them that are high performers. So 18% of any sales force are carrying virtually 100% of the revenue.
Yep.
Why do we have all the others sitting there breathing our air? Nobody can ever answer that for me. Well, she's the founder's niece and he's been here a long time. Yeah, but they're not producing anything profitable. In a moment, we'll get to what the true definition of quota is. That's another shock. But the first shock is most companies, 1 or 2 or 8 out of 100 people are carrying the load for all the others. You literally could dismiss from your employment those not carrying their load, and your sales would not go down, and your profitability will go sharply up because you're not carrying the salaries and benefits and stuff for the ones who weren't selling anything. So
Right.
Number 1 in grooming an organization to have those who can sell, set your resolve to only hire what I call the 8%ers.
Right. Yes. So, and as Neely has pointed out, in today's market, those 8%ers aren't looking for jobs, right? They are employed somewhere else, producing well for somebody else. So if, again, let's go to the math equation, the revenue science. If 73% of your sales staff is not performing and they cost you X per month, and you go about being very intentional about hiring the 8%ers, how are you going to get the 8%ers away from where they're already at, happy, producing? What do great salespeople like? You may need to make an investment. You may need to step up how much you're willing to pay somebody to come into your organization that's an 8%er and produce for you, right? And that investment in that individual will pay off in much greater spades, much higher dividends, much higher yield than just taking your chances on a bunch of low performers that are going to be a net loss for your business, right? So what do you do right now? And I know you work with Neely a lot. How are you going out and attracting those 8%ers into organizations? How do you find them? How do you bring them in? How do you entice them to even talk to you in the first place? They may be super happy with what they're doing.
Sure. So with no offense intended to the great job boards of the world, ZipRecruiter, Indeed.com, I can go on and on and on. If you're advertising on those, sorry, folks, you're wasting your money.
Right.
All it's going to pull is from a great underemployed and largely unemployable pool, which is why Neely and I say what's going to show up for interviews is going to be the best of the worst, like not people you would be proud to have be part of your team.
Right.
Okay. So what we now have to do is a direct recruitment strategy. Get ready for it, Devyn. This is hard to get your head around. In advance of need.
Yeah.
We don't wait till those 3 seats are open to go, oh crap, hey HR, place an ad on Indeed. I got to fill these seats. We begin recruiting people. Now, this is a true story. I walked into this very podcast studio and your prior guest was up and leaving. That's somebody we ought to be recruiting. That's a superstar.
Yep.
I want him on the podcast. Let's take him to lunch. Let's check in on him from time to time. Now, do I have a slot for him right now? No. But that's an 8%er right there.
Right.
We're going to keep him close to vest.
Yep.
We're going to do check-ins on a routine basis. I told you in sidebar chatter before the producer of the show got us all set up that I just started a thread with a mutual friend of ours. That's somebody I just want to check on because she's an 8%er.
Yep.
So first of all, recruit in advance of need. A great place to be with your company is when you look out your front door and there's a line of people saying, hey, we heard about you. Whenever a job comes open, any job in your company, we want to be here considered. We're like, yeah, but we don't have any jobs, right? I know, but we know about your employer brand. We've heard from other 8%ers who work for you how great the environment there and the ability, in the case of salespeople, to support a lifestyle with great earnings is. We want to come work for you. Is a way better place to be than, oh crap, I've got 3 seats available. Hey, HR, put a fishing net out for the best of the worst. Recruit in advance of need is one early key strategy.
Love it. Love it. And that means you're not to use the cliche word, but you're like you have to expand who you know. Always.
Yep.
Right? Any business owner, any entrepreneur, any employee, expand who you know. Right? Your network will be more powerful than even the amount of knowledge that you can amass over the years. Right? There's a great book, Who Not How, and it's like, I don't have to know everything, right? But who can I bring in that can help with that? So recruiting in advance of need is being intentional about making sure you are finding those 8%ers out there. And that's not posting a job on one of those job boards, but being intentional about where can I go? Where do those people, where are they showing up? How do I meet them? Right? What conferences maybe do I need to attend? What organizations would they be selling for? Who has a great reputation for their sales training? Someone like Salesforce. Some of the best salespeople I've ever talked to work for Salesforce. Who is currently at Salesforce? If I wanted to find a high caliber SaaS seller, I'm going to go and start meeting people that sell for Salesforce. And I may not have a job right now, but I want to get to know those people because of the caliber that exists in that organization with their robust sales training. Okay. So recruit in advance of need. Now you have a need. What do we do?
Next mistake to avoid, get over your infatuation with industry experience. Oh my gosh, they work in our business. Oh my gosh, this is the leading salesman in our sector for this kind of thing. Oh my God, he's been doing this for 10 years. Stop it.
Yep.
So here's another shocking statistic. According to the Society for Human Resource Management, an organization who has been studying this sort of thing for 75 years, for goodness sake, what does SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, say the normal success rate is when a hiring manager makes a decision to hire somebody aided by no particular science, rigid discipline, interviewing skills, just I'm going on gut. I like the fact that he's worked for a similar company. I've watched him actually work for this other company and wanted her to come and join us for a long time. At the end of a year or two, what would you say the percentage success rate is that SHRM has discovered when frontline managers do their own hiring and they don't particularly have any science or rigor behind it? They're just, they think, good at hiring. What's the success rate a year later?
Say 25%.
Not that cynical. It's 50-50.
Got it.
But here's what I tell my clients. If you're willing to settle for 50-50 success, then the next time you want to hire, as people enter your job fair or your lobby and are greeted by your receptionist, hand them a quarter and tell them to flip it. If they flip it and call it they're hired, If they don't call it, they're not hired, and that's going to be your hiring practice.
Yep.
Strip out these $1 million, applicant tracking systems, and I'll just take it all out and just flip a coin, because that's the success you're going to have if you let frontline hiring managers who've not been skilled, trained, supported by any kind of rigor or science, you just let them hire. It's going to be a 50% fail out rate. Now, that may not seem that bad. You said 25, so that sounds pretty good. Here's the problem. Mathematically, again, revenue science is a bunch of interlinked math equations.
Yep.
If you have 50% hiring success, at the end of a year's time, you're going to replace your entire organization. You're just going to keep entirely replacing on a 1 to 2 year cycle. And it's going to be turnover, replace, because you're trying to cure for the 50% bad hire portion.
Yep. And now you have to sell more and more.
Try
and sell more to feed the machine.
And if you want more math, also Sherm says that the expense of that ejected, failed out bad hire is about 2 times their salary or comp.
Yep.
Oh, shoot, that got really expensive really fast. Okay.
Yep.
So what we were talking about as we started this is get over hiring people because they come from your industry, your business, or a competitor. Here's why. That 50% unresolved bad hire load, we now know in studies going back 100 years, really good quality empirical work, that hiring based on industry experience in similar jobs for similar companies only improves that 50% bad hire rate by about 6%. It's a rounding error.
Yeah.
It will not improve. That's not a strategy. That will not gain you market share. That will not propel you to the levels of achievement your company needs in revenue, because you're putting too much cred on did they work in our business. Your prior guest, we both happen to know his father. His father has a saying that's fun. So does that person really have 20 years experience? Or do they have 1 year of experience repeated 20 times over and over again?
Yep.
Right? So get over it, and let's look at what's the makeup of our current 8%ers. Now, again, that's my slang. It means our superstar top producers. It's only about 8 of 100 of them carrying the load for everybody else. What's the secret sauce that makes them so good? And we might shock ourselves and realize, well, that's not industry experience, because we hired her and she came from a completely different industry. So yeah, Mikey's right. It can't be industry experience. So Devyn, the next mistake to avoid with the best practice is unlock the secret sauce for your current top performers. You say, well, everybody knows that. No. I've talked to senior executives, investors, and board members in companies all over the world, and they cannot articulate to me what the secret sauce of their best performers are.
Right.
They literally don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. So you assess your own personnel first. Look at them, understand what their makeup is, how they're wired, how they approach their day, and it's really about the how, right? How they go about doing their work. And if you can understand how that person goes about doing their work, and you find more people that will go about doing that regardless of industry, like you've talked about, it's just who is going to approach the work the same way that this top performer does.
Yes.
And that becomes the predictability that you add to your sales force and your revenue generation. Okay, we have this individual A, they do it this way. And now we found individual B that operates the same way.
Is predicted to have the same elements of the secret sauce as our top performers. Now, I'd make it really easy for your 5 to 50 million audience by just telling you what the secret sauce is. Here's the problem. It differs with every single company, every industry, every market sector, every geography. Okay. So, gosh, then, Mikey, you were talking about science. How could this be science if it's different everywhere? You know what's the same? Is the approach you use to learn what the secret sauce is. That's consistent. It's nailed down. It works every time. It's how you discover the secret sauce, but it could be really different for medical device sales than residential real estate sales, totally different. But the methodology to learn, why are my top 8 realtors the top in my brokerage? Why are my top 8 med device salespeople just killing it? Like orders of magnitude more revenue than their average and poor performing counterparts. And isn't it interesting, Devyn, that very successful, often very wealthy company owners and operators themselves, when challenged by us, cannot answer what is the secret sauce. Isn't that interesting?
Right.
Their whole family future depends on knowing the secret sauce. Because, Devyn, if you don't know it, then you can't replicate it. You talked about replicating. Well, then let's just go higher for that.
Yep.
What if you don't know what that is?
Right. Yep. That's step one. And you and I would call that process performing a top performer study, right? Where you understand the top performer in the organization. And if you have enough of those people, if your organization is long enough, you can actually have statistical evidence that demonstrates that cohort of individuals' ability to be successful in the role, and now make decisions, hiring decisions based on, we will hire these people and we can't hire these people because we have enough statistical proof and evidence to say that's a loss right out of the gate, right? We need to find these people. We will hire these people. Take them through the interview process. Obviously, that can be developed and be same way you go about the process of identifying, who those top performers are, those 8%ers are. Now, your interview process can be very prescriptive, right? And you can go through the same type of process to make sure that who you're talking to is that person you believe they are, right? Through a series of questions and case studies that they may need to perform, or different, and this would vary company to company, right? Like how you would approach the interview process to identify those who's that are the 8%ers.
Yeah. As we approach the time of year when we will have the Indianapolis 500 race, well, weeks before it, they're doing tuning runs and they're doing time trials, and they'll even have carburetor day. They know what makes that car go 220 miles an hour, fierce amount of speed on a relatively short track. But you still got to test against it. The car looks right, it weighs right, the fuel's pumping right. We're still got to get it on the track.
Yep.
And see how it really performs under duress. That's what an interview process, broadly described interview, because it's more than a verbal exchange of questions and answers. There's a lot more to it than that. But yeah, and moving a little bit back to something you said, we would now, if we do the understanding of our top performers thoroughly, and empirical proof of what the secret sauce is, that's important to company owners and officers, because there are federal laws that say if you're going to screen in or screen out people from consideration for work at your company, you need to have predictive evidence that what you're screening in or out on is real, or you can be in a world of legal trouble in today's litigious environment.
Absolutely.
And so, especially for bigger organizations, it becomes really important not to guess what we should hire for the hiring standard, because a standard implies we're going to screen some people out. They're not going to meet this standard. You gotta be careful that you validated that standard
100%.
and it's real. And a lot of my work day to day is spent validating the secret sauce for top performers in different organizations, because if we're going to make the fateful step to put them through time trials and carburetor day and make a big investment, financial and otherwise, in them, we better be sure the model's right. But once the model's right, actually it becomes very easy to hire only 8%ers, or those predicted, right? I could have the perfect candidate who matches the top performer profile and not realize they don't own a car, but they're in route sales. How are they going to get from place to place, right? I mean, there's some things we still got to check.
Yep.
So I would say we would hire those predicted to be top performers, and we would let attrition take care of their average and underperforming counterparts over time. and we would only fill those jobs now with new top performers. That's how we take a company from being average or okay in the marketplace to dominating and leading the marketplace. And by the way, just so you know, Devyn, we do it in every job. It's not just sales.
Yeah. Right.
We do it in nursing assistants. We do it in cafeteria workers. I mean, every job has people that are good and terrible, and we need to know what equals good, and we need to hire for that. It just becomes especially measurable on the revenue side of the business because we can assign quotas to those people.
Right.
And in a moment, I'd like to go and reveal to your listeners what the truth is behind quotas, and we'll get to that when we get to it.
Yeah, let's put a bow on this. And a word you used earlier, again, that can be applied is there are certain, like, I should never be an accountant. I'm not going to be a CPA. That is, if you want me to fail in a role, give me a company's financials to audit and do an analysis and find patterns and things like that. That is not my strength. It would be unfair for me to first apply to that role and me to make it through an interview process and a company actually hire me for that role. It would be inhumane to have me be that miserable and set up that much for failure, because that is not what I'm passionate about. It's not my strength. And that can be true for every single individual. If you think honestly about yourself, it's like, where would I want to be that I can be put in a position to really succeed? And there are some people that should just not do sales, or they should not be a nurse, or they should not be a carpenter, or I shouldn't be like, there are certain things that I just shouldn't be. And maybe I naturally find my way into a role that makes sense for me and based on how I'm wired and operate and my principles and values and everything else that's created this being today. And sometimes, that process happens for an individual through rejection. It's like, okay, well, I'm not fit to be there, and I'm not fit to be here. And then they find the place where they really resonate with, and they can stick and stay and be happy in their job. At the end of the day, this revenue generation can sound a little cold, right? And it's like, oh, we're business operators and we need to turn businesses around and people are the problem. That's not what we are saying here, right? It is the right thing to do for the business and the individual.
It's humane.
Is put both people, both entities in a position to succeed and have success, right?
I couldn't tell you the number of times I've heard people articulate, well, my chosen calling is this, but I need money now, so I think I'm going to take a sales job.
Right.
That's not humane. They're setting themselves up for failure. It's going to be trauma and pain all around. And so having properly validated screens to screen out those less likely to be successful is actually humane.
Right.
We can now get them on, and many times in companies I work with, we identify early on they are not a probable candidate for top performer in sales, but my gosh, would they be good in customer success?
Right.
Or whatever. So there's a humanity to this.
Yes.
that can't be overstated. The point is, business is tough endeavor.
Right.
The failure rate in business is very high. So don't make it tougher by making these mistakes we're talking about of not co-creating with customers, just letting random salespeople do whatever they want, lacking a strategy, and instead add rigor and discipline, which largely, Devyn, is a set of mathematical equations, and stick to the rigors you talked about. Follow the process. As they were watching that swimmer swim the channel, they're reminding her via megaphone to stay with the process. And she did, and she made it.
Yeah.
They didn't say, well, there's the channel. Make 100 calls a day. Hope it works out for you.
Right. Great metaphor and shameless plug, right? She basically had coaches. She was the expert. She was swimming. Those coaches couldn't jump in the water and do what she was doing, but she needed them.
With a different viewpoint and a method. Yep.
100%, right? Great metaphor for the value that someone like you can bring to an organization that, you know nothing about precision manufacturing, but you are a coach that can sit over here, know the inputs, know the right things, and shout with the megaphone, do this, don't do that, keep doing this, right? A lot of value to that outside perspective. Okay, so we recruit ahead of need. We have a pool of people. Now that we have a need, we put them through a proper screening process. Maybe we have a seat to fill, and we have 5 potential candidates that we like, and we can fill that with one of those. So we put them through the process to find the best of those 5, put them in place, and now we bring them in and onboard them, and they have quotas to meet. We're talking about sales again, right? We can help with everything, but let's go back to sales. Bring them on, and they have a quota to meet. So let's talk about quotas, and then we'll wrap this up.
So the beginning point of this rigor and discipline for the business itself or its revenue leader, sales manager, VP of sales, chief sales officer, whatever title you choose, begins with quota. And Devyn, quota is the single most misunderstood construct in revenue and sales worldwide. So let's dispense with that for your insightful listeners, and let's cure that. If you walk up to a salesperson and say, hey, this year, what's your quota? They'll spout a number. In fact, that's not their quota. It's their target or their goal or their plan. In revenue science, a quota has a unique and singular function that is almost 100% misunderstood. So let's cure that. Quota is a mathematical financial calculation. It is the point at which a salesperson's next sale will yield profit to the business. It's a break-even calculation.
Right.
And here's how we make that calculation. We sit down with our business partners in finance and HR, and we fill a whiteboard with everything it costs to get a salesperson hired, on board, up, running, and selling. And it's things like, what's it cost to place ads on job boards? What are the salaries of people doing the interviews times the number of minutes that those interviews run? What does a drug screen cost? What does a pre-hire assessment battery cost? If we're going to entertain the candidate, which is popular now, hey, we've got a great interview, let's go to dinner. Okay, what's the expense for that? Let's look at salary. Let's look at benefits. Let's look at perks. If they're successful and they get to President's Club, okay, that's a deluxe trip to Cancun for 50 people. Okay, well, what's that? On and on it goes. It's different for every company, but finance, business partners, and HR people are pretty savvy about knowing what all those expense points are.
Yep.
Add them up, we add them up, and we add them up. And the dollars that it takes to now having gotten that person on board, getting them supervised, equipping them with their Microsoft Office 365 seat license, their company supplied tablet. I can go on and on. You can imagine all the factors that go into this.
Right.
The dollar amount in expense that net costs to the company means that once hired, now that salesperson has to sell enough revenue at our gross margin for whatever she or he sells to have paid back that whole dollar amount. Now, you and I live in the Metro Phoenix area. Phoenix is the 5th largest metro area in the country. It has a variety of suburbs with prosaic names. One of them is Mesa, Arizona. Latino phrase for table, because Mesa is very flat.
Yep.
And you and I both lived in it. Okay.
Yep.
And I can think of a $15 million service company, not a precision manufacturer, where we did this calculation, and this might shock your listeners, but that number was a little over $998,000.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, they have a dozen of these reps, so that's more than $10 million. So what we now have is the ability to set what is a true quota. So we go through a process with that company and their team and the revenue leader and everybody, such that today, a year later, if you stop any of their dozen or so reps and say, what's your quota? What they know that means is, here's your keep your job privilege. You need to sell $1.2 million in revenue at our margin to cover that onboarding expense.
Yep.
So quota now becomes 1.2 million, and it's for everybody. And if you don't sell it, you're on a performance improvement plan. If you still don't sell it, you're gone. right? That's not what your target is for the year. That company has reps that have targets of anywhere from $8 to $10 million in annual sales. Quota is the point where you lose your job because you're not writing profitable sales. It's usual in a service business that upon newly being hired, it takes that account executive, actually they call them sales executives, somewhere between 5 and 12 months to become successful and actually be tracking towards 1.2 million in sales. Devyn, get your head around that. It means for almost a whole year, everything they sell is producing no contribution to the EBITDA of the company whatsoever. None.
Yep.
Nothing. Now, I'm not saying they're not good people, hardworking. Some will go on to become real superstars, Devyn, with the right method and systems and coaching, right? They will.
Yep.
But others are going to fail. And meantime, the company and its investors have to foot that bill, and they're celebrating, hey, so-and-so got a big sale this week. Look at this purchase order came in. It's for $75,000. And you're going, yeah, but there's no profitability on that until they cross 1.2 million. And now the next sale begins to have a small amount of profit on it.
Right.
So this onboarding of new people, or Devyn, the harboring of underperformers who may be vets, with the company for many, many years.
Yep.
Is actually not producing profit for the company. And those people have to go. That's part of the rigor of building a solid revenue science-based sales, marketing, and lead gen function. Is you got to have the rigor to go, yeah, but they're not actually producing the profit that we need to run the whole rest of the company.
Right. Right.
That's a scary statistic. And now you think, but wait a minute. Earlier, Mikey said that only 8% of our team are even really the superstars. How many of the other 92% aren't even producing $1 of profit?
Yeah.
We got to have rigor about that, Devyn.
Yep. Love it. So much value, so much information. Super engaging conversation. Mikey, can't thank you enough for coming in and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. Appreciate it. Look forward to the next episode we get to do together.
And I'm going to watch 5 to 50. Just keep on blowing it out with revenue science. It's awesome.
Love it. Thanks again, Mikey.
My pleasure. Thanks to all the listeners.